6:24 a.m. on February 23rd, 2016. As I want to say 2016 or 23 or 6, just switch to 25 on the 25th second of the recording, which, by the way, on YouTube, once the video is uploaded, the numbers change. And it's Central European time. In Great Britain right now, I guess it's 5:25. 5 is everything creates record once the High Priest card. That 25 is kudos to my brightest lights. Over on the West Coast in the States, it's 9:25. 9 is I practiced. Donna. No idea if you're ever gonna hear these. But keep in mind, in case you haven't heard the previous ones, these are mostly for audio. It's easier for me to talk into the webcam and put it on YouTube when I switch. So I don't necessarily recommend you watch with your eyes. However, even though I say that all the time, sometimes I find myself watching and sometimes I cringe because, for example, right now I'm going to switch to another tab, and because it's dark, it's almost sunrise here in Rome. You're probably going to be able to see my face. It's bad lighting. I haven't cleaned up or washed my hair, and so depending on what tab I'm looking at, I'm looking at your picture from Facebook, one of the 2 pictures that you've got. There's also a sexy girl walking away. I find myself far more attracted. Well, I'm attracted to both your picture and the chick walking away, but and perhaps attraction is not quite the right word, but I like looking at both of them. Let's put it this way. But the girl on the right tugs at my boy. The woman that I'm looking at, which is a picture of you, it tugs a lot more. Oh, that sounds very it's emotional. But there's a physical aspect to it, but it's emotional. And I understand from Facebook it sounds like you've got a partner, and we're gonna talk about. I'm gonna talk about all kinds of subjects. It's all good. So as I change tabs, the lighting, because it's dark out, not for very long, it's going to be sunrise, like I said, soon. It's already a little bit light out. It's dark in my hermit space. But the light is going to show my face, and sometimes I cringe. Sometimes I find it fascinating, but the videos are mostly for audio. Now here's the situation. So what I was gonna say is I recommend you understand. What would be ideal is that you have your eyes on. I know you have tinnitus, and we're gonna get to that. I mean, I'm pretty sure you have tinnitus, but I recommend that you, much as it's unlikely that you'll be listening to these very soon or at all. It's not extremely unlikely, and if you do find yourself, whether it's this week or 10 years from now when I've kicked the bucket, or I'm alive or whatnot, but that if you do find yourself listening to these, if what I would recommend is that your eyes are somewhere other than the video on the whole, and they may be on the page where I've embedded this video, which is likely to contain the screenshots of the the 6 pages that I've got open, or whatever it may contain, or your eyes are closed or staring at the ceiling or looking at something else. But if you're doing this with the technology that allows you to, anyway, because this might be, assuming that I end up sharing this or it gets saved and there's no glitches and I upload it, this might be the first of a series. So these disclaimers that I'm making right now, these premises, etc., are not gonna, hopefully not gonna make them again. Although if you explore my stuff, you'd find me hearing them again and again and again, but it'd be good if I didn't make them again. The other things I'm gonna smoke, I understand smoking gets a really bad rap. I addressed this in another video, and so let's get into I think the 2 or 3 fundamental subjects that come to my mind. The several fundamental subjects that come to my mind are your tinnitus, your significant other, whether it's your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whatnot. Sosor Derrida, and that's sort of a makeshift signifier. A good car. Your humor. And I want to implement or produce and implement the most effective and efficient way for me to be happy about this recording. I've already made my other standard mantras, which I make frequently. Now, I was thinking of sending you an email titled Loneliness versus Tinnitus. In the event that I don't give you a written version of what I'm about to say, what I would love to say now, apparently, I could be mistaken, but apparently you've got a severe form of tinnitus. I explored it. No, I mean online. So, and you've also said explicitly twice, was it twice or 3 times, that you're very ill, but specifically that, you know, unable to respond to anyone much about anything. Yeah, you've sent me 2 emails. It feels like 3, but it's 2, and something to the effect of, okay, the first thing that you wrote me is, "Hi Took, it's lovely. I had a poem around. I can probably be more useful in a while as I'm not very well, hence not having been on my blog recently, so there's all these indications about here and on your Google Plus and your Facebook and your two emails about you're very ill and you can't really reply. And as I was reading about tinnitus, anyway, the conclusion is that it may seem absurd that I'm contacting you again and that I'm contacting you with audio. Sorry, something's making me think about suicidal deer. Next 1 mile. Interested in time travel? Meet here last Thursday, 7 p.m. You got 2 pictures of yourself. One is it's got quite a smile, quite a smile. It's sort of a birichino smile, or a birichina smile, or even whatever. But I can't translate it. Don't worry about it. But the other one is that's sort of very much like the woman of my dreams, which is what I should be looking at. Except it actually bothers me that there's that other chick. As much as your significant other is welcome to hear these on my end, there's a type of or level of intimacy that I want. And it goes like this. Now I'm reading from your November blog post about part 2 of Ghost and Freud and Ghostly. I took the liberty to skip part 1 and I interrupted, I think it was quote unquote yesterday, 2 days ago or whatever. Right around what it said, it's a great essay, even in funny places. I'm reading your words now. Parenthesis, Freud hates his reflection. Colon, it can't be him. Exclamation mark, close parenthesis, and he examines the uncanny in terms of Gothic literature, notably Hoffman's classic. Hoffman has his link, the Sandman, which makes me think of the Sandman in comics with its central trope of blindness, which Freud associates with fear of castration, and the motif of the double, which aptly occurs again and again in literature. Nikolai Gogol's The Overcoat, where the ghost of corpse Akakievich steals overcoats from people, influenced Dostoevsky's The Double. Where Golyadkin is convinced the clerk is trying to, because you were talking about doppelgangers and is trying to steal his identity and usurp his status. So I have my own references, you have your own references about some of them I can refer to myself in terms of having a bit of exposure to them. Some of them, like the ones you've listed here, Hoffman's, Gogol, no, Dostoevsky, this typical beginner thing where you confuse Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, but I think long time ago I read a bit of both. Did, did he do Crime and Punishment? The Double. It does make me think about Lacan and the Mirror to some extent. You should know that there's really hot, almost BDSM looking French professor that was visiting, teaching at the University of Colorado. I think it was 1990 when I was in graduate school for American Lit. And I was the only student in the seminar. We were studying William Faulkner from a Lacan and Freud context. And I was the only student, even though it was my first semester as a graduate student, I believe. My first semester. Could have been my second, but I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was my first semester. And already I was registering in a comparative literature class as opposed to a typical American literature class. I was the only student that I should wear these black pantyhose, which I have a D fetish for, and this black leather miniskirt. She was quite older than I, which I like. Blonde, although I like brunettes, very skinny. Look, amazingly sexy. Sometimes I wonder why did nobody make her pass at me. I believe she was a widow, but she was an expert on Lacan. She was a personal disciple of his when Lacan was alive, of course, and I was the only student that, for the final paper, where we really had to address Lacan, turn in the paper on time, because everybody, despite the fact that we'd finished the semester, the seminar, Lacan was just too much, and we had PhD students in there and seasoned graduate students in there, but I was the only one that turned in the paper, and she gave me a straight A. It was a very, it was an art piece more than a paper, because the way that I did the paper was completely informal, and I put images in there and wrote things backwards and upside down and so on and so forth. And she told me, she gave me a straight A. I was in her office when she was going to talk to me about the paper, and God, for the longest time I wanted to contact her, but it's a bit of a complex matter shamanically and practically, but I don't even know if she's alive, but I haven't taken the steps to try and contact her. But so I was in her office, and bonds of synchronicity. 2 readers, 1 spread. I was in the what is intuition? Simple psychic tarot reading, plus how do I do my readings and what's intuition? Readings of the tarot nook, etc. I was in her office, and she was sitting, I think she was cross-legged, so she might have been on this side of her desk. I could be wrong, but she was smiling. I think she was probably in her mid-40s. I was in my, I would have been 25 or so. Mid or even late 40s. I could be wrong. Man, was she sexy, but she was sort of leaning forward a little bit and smiling with sort of a, it's hard to describe that smile. And she was like, what do you think I gave you as far as the grade on your exam? Because obviously the way that I'd written was just completely irreverent of any way that you're supposed to write a paper. And and I said, well, you either give me an F. I think you either give me an F or an A. She said, I gave you an A. And she said, you understood Lacan better than all the people, all the professors that write books about Lacan. What does that have to do with the car, with the good car? I said, you've got tinnitus, probably from what I can gather. I was tempted to send you these links about this therapy and that therapy, and this guy that wrote something about having the radio turned onto a station, and these people that have this free version to the 5,000 pound technology that's has to do with the wavelengths and the hearing, and they've created this app. But then I thought, besides the fact that maybe I'm snooping around too much, or it might come across that way, but then I thought, dude, if it took me an hour to research this stuff, she and her significant other probably, or it's like, no, and that's why I wrote you only. That's why I wrote you only. Let's go to my prayers and wishes for you. By all means, don't stress about replying. Exclamation point. Don't even think about tending to others. The universe already knows you care for everyone and everything in it. I said that because, for one thing, I think it'll probably be a good thing to tell to everybody, even your worst enemies. But I really said that specifically to you because I'd read this thing when you were in the article about happiness, which is I've told you either in writing or by voice, but it's no, I think in writing it's probably one of the two most fundamental subjects that I'm interested in discussing with you. You made a comment about not just a comment, but the large part about your critique of happiness as not only as, the elation aspect, the joy aspect, but the selfish aspect. Very intelligent comments, but about how you were putting it more in a political framework. I put it more in a cosmic framework, how we're all connected, and it's a mistake to think that you can be happy unless everybody else is happy, and this is so fundamental for me. And in addition to a lot of things that I'd noticed about you, whether it was in your two brief emails to me or other things that I've noticed, that you seem to be very aware of others and respectful of others and caring of others. That particular thing that you almost pounded on, about it's not about you happy, it's about you happy in a context in which everybody else and everything else in the universe, I argue, is happy. So that made me put that comment about the email, instead of telling you, hey, I've read this thing about tinnitus, and which I, like I said, my qualms about on a lot of fronts. I thought, okay, my prayers and wishes for you. By all means, don't stress about replying. Don't even think about tending to others. The universe already knows you care for everyone and everything in it. That's quite good enough. You must tend to yourself. I am appreciating your vlogs. My prayers and wishes for you took. So, what does this have to do with the good car? Loneliness, tinnitus, intimacy. I have been suicidal or had been suicidal. I've had a lot of experience with pain that, forgive me for saying this, is possibly worse than tinnitus. Although I've heard of people, one person that committed suicide because of tinnitus. It sounds hellish. Uh, there's no cure yet, and people that want to kill themselves. And I don't mean disrespect, but when your body is in such pain because you can't stand your life, even though apparently it's a psychological thing, it's not a physical thing. And or one of the primary components, if not one of the or the primary component to my having been suicidal for years, although there was alternating with periods where I had joy and so on and so forth. And when I was younger, I was so bubbly and so positive. It was too much. But then I went through very dark years, especially between, I'd say, 2000, more or less 2006, and recently I've made very deliberate self-help path for me for health to a great extent. Not to a great extent, to a small extent. Maybe I would not be on this earth if not for the fact that I don't want to and didn't want to bring that pain to my parents. Although there were times when I even aware that I put a mechanism around my neck or a rope around my neck, not for hanging. I'm a judo expert and I know about strength. Very gently pass out and then die by cutting off the circulation to the brain, as opposed to suffocation. It's actually a strangulation in terms of blood reaching your brain, and it's very peaceful. But I set it up so that I could immediately change my mind right before I black out, and that's what happened several times. And by the way, when I reached those levels, the pain was no longer there, because at that point you've already sort of almost gone across, although not quite gone across, but the pain that precedes getting to that state of peace where I was actually killing myself, almost killing myself. I don't mean disrespect at all. In fact, I've been thinking, shit, you know, this tinnitus thing, but but yeah, the pain is insane, and the reason it has to do with the car is that the loneliness, not having a woman to talk with. Although I'm not into monogamy, I haven't settled that issue because I have very strong monogamous tendencies, but I'm not into monogamy. In concept, I believe it's unhealthy, and I keep saying, what if you were to go to a planet and they tell you you can only have one friend? You'd think that was insane. Well, we live in a planet where it's taboo. Fascinating subject to me. It's taboo. Important subject to me. It's taboo to have more than one partner. And the taboo pivots specifically on sex. So as I've said again and again and again in other contexts, you could imagine going to a planet where, despite the fact that obviously sex is a biological thing to it, but you could go to a planet where it's like you cheat on your significant other if you play Scrabble with somebody else. We live in a planet where you cheat on your significant other if you have romantic physical contact with them. By the way, I should put a link to or I'll tell you what, if you go to we direct traffic on the internet.com, this is too fucking funny. if you go to redirect traffic on the internet.com, I think it's, let me see what page it is. We're gonna go to, I think it's around page 4. I don't think it's before page 4. No, it might be page 5. Let's try page 5. Hold on. Hold on, don't go there yet. Come on. Let's try page 3. No, wait a second. Okay, hold on. There we go. Okay, page 6, the top link. All right. So seriously, honey, you should be looking at this. Go to redirect traffic on the internet.com, go to page 6 and click the top link. Do it now. I'll wait. No, you can pause. Okay, so yeah, just pause the video. Do it now. All right. So if your significant other in another planet would be jealous and would be taboo, and there'd be cause for divorce and suicide and 8 years of therapy if your significant other plays Scrabble with you, but on our planet, you're going to go through 8 years of therapy and maybe have a divorce and so on and so forth if your significant other touches somebody else or is touched by somebody else in one of the taboo zones. Good thing we got that thing. Robocop reads Modelland in Modelland, and so he's probably studying this. He's got a big, he got lots of RAM or fixed memory things that he can refer to. Anyway, what does this have to do with the car? There's two extremes of the spectrum. One is where we only have one soulmate, and it takes all of the cosmos for the two souls to connect. Another end of the spectrum is where I was talking about your picture on Facebook, and there's this young sexy chick walking away, where it might turn out that she and 532 million others could be just right for me, and we could relate and have intimate connections that are good for us with so many other people. It's a complex matter. However, if you've been around a lot and you do a lot of self-study and you realize, you know what, that chick might make great comics and she might get into my tarot, but I have studied Saussure, I have studied Derrida, I have been to graduate school, I've got an intellectual brain. I was told by a disciple, an international expert on Lacan, who everybody dreaded and they didn't know what to do with him in graduate school, and who was more influential than Freud, arguably in some ways, or next to Freud in terms of the influence that he had on intellectual studies for decades in the United States of America, which subliminally or on fundamental levels influences the collective conscious of the world, as everything does, like whatever car that's driving by that I can't see but I can barely hear. It's a bus. Everything influences everything. But how many women that look like you are there that have your kind of PhD that write the things that you write about Freud and reflection, that have the holistic awareness, even though you take it from a political perspective, and I do too, and we need to get into that, about happiness, that can talk about health, that study the tarot, that have the kind of intellectual discourse, and the fucking science about time travel and the humor. It's like, so if you're looking at a car and you've driven a lot of cars and you know, no, this car, I need a car that does these kinds of things. So in this phase that I'm transitioning out of a breakup and dealing, and it's not even a breakup because we didn't see each other, because she's under sort of a house arrest because she's in and out of psychiatric wards, and she has a relationship with her mother. Her father passed away. A relationship with her mother that is the Muhammad and the mountain have not met yet, have not come to, have not joined yet. Neither Muhammad has gone to the mountain, nor the mountain has gone to Muhammad. The mother hates me. We hadn't seen each other in 2 years. I finally found her. We were together 3 years ago, but it was a complicated thing, and I always find myself engaging in with really profoundly not normal people, with drama and trauma and so on and so forth. So, you know, in a way, even though we broke up, I'll always love her. In a way, we didn't break up. In a way, we weren't really dating anyway, because she was under house arrest. Her mother is keeping me from seeing her, and I was engaging in these monologues, which I've been doing for years, since I was suicidal, and I went from having 150 friends to having nobody. You should probably go to not now, but when you want to sort of see the dark side, go to We Direct Traffic on the Internet or just go to darkside.zoxer.com. Okay. Although I do recommend you go the route again, not necessarily now, but then again, you can pause these and come back to these, or whatever. And I was keeping that very, very private. I've started to share only recently that dark side page, and I seldom revisit it because there's so much darkness there, and pain, and so on and so forth. But just recently, days ago, when I redid With Direct Traffic on the Internet.com, I decided to actually put it there through the About page. So if you go through Info and then About to Thornton, it's one of the links. But in the process, the page that actually links to the About page for me is possibly the first time that I'm happy with an About page for me. Anyway, part of my therapy, because you need to deal with this tinnitus, which there is no cure for. Loneliness has been so insanely painful for me, having spent 51 years of my life where the thing that I wanted the most was an intimate connection, regardless of the fact that intellectually I believe that intimate connection should be with more than one person, and all in the open. Much as, you know, one of the most stimulating erotic notions is to have an illicit affair, but there's a difference between fantasy and reality. But the intimate connection, of having another soul of the opposite sex, if you're heterosexual, that you enjoy looking at, where there's a meeting of the minds and a meeting of the souls, has been like, it's been hell for me. I've had technically seven relationships. Some of them we consider each other husband and wife, but didn't get married and so on and so forth. But they were always in the end unhealthy, and drama and trauma and so on and so forth. And so, I've got this huge thing about loneliness that is more devastating than I can describe, even though I'm managing it. And the process that I'm going through right now, if you were to compare the scale of the intensity of the pain that I felt in the past, the discomfort or pain that I feel right now, it's on a scale of like 0.003. I get numerological, so I go to 35190. But seriously, a bad day for me right now, in terms of if I measure the intensity of the pain, is 0.003% of the pain that intensity of the pain that I've had in my life. Or you could argue that it's something like, if the intensity of the pain that I experienced several times was 99, where at 100 you're dead. These days, a bad day with loneliness is probably if it reaches a 3, that's a lot of pain. It's the kind of pain that most people wouldn't put up with in their lives. But having been familiar with days of pain that reached 99, days of pain that were over 50, and the technique that I do is like, I monitor myself, and like, if my pain is reaching a level of 1, which it would be pretty painful for a lot of people, I can redirect myself and monitor myself so that it doesn't, instead of going towards 2, it goes towards 0. And these past few days I've been hovering between 0 and 1 point something. But the fundamental thing is that that's like opening, that risks opening a dam. So I have the years and practice of responsibility of avoiding that. But the suicidal thoughts can come in at 0.5, because it's kind of like, right now you probably cannot imagine not having tinnitus, because one of the things that sounds devastating about it is that it's probably constant. But if you could imagine that your tinnitus goes away, and then a year later, pretend that your tinnitus goes away, and then a year later, and you know how, like, when you're sick, you think that you remember what the pain feels like, but the fact of the matter is that you don't quite. It's not the same as experiencing it. The more time goes by that you're healthy, the more health seems normal. But imagine it, you're healthy for a year. At first, you can't believe you're walking on cloud 9 because you don't have the tinnitus. After 6 months, you've gotten used to it. You think about tinnitus every day, and so on and so forth. But imagine then there's a day where you get a tiny bit of the same symptom, that, even though it's on a scale of 0.5, as opposed to the worst tinnitus symptoms that you've experienced. You see how you could, the reaction that you would have would be, whoa, oh my God, because even though it's not to the level of 100, if after you're healthy, you get even a little bit of that. Imagine going through a long time where you don't feel any tinnitus at all. You don't have it, and then you just get a little bit of it. Yes, on a scale you could say, well, that's 0.5 compared to 100. But the instant you get that 0.5, that sign, it'll begin to make you remember. So that zero point 0.5 would be the difference. It would be a watershed. It'd be between not having tinnitus and having tinnitus. That's why when I'm telling you that I'm very careful when I'm fluctuating in my pain about my loneliness. And I go, okay, I'm at pain level 1. The suicidal thoughts and the remembering of the intensity of the pain. That of course wasn't just loneliness, because if you look up at darkside.zoxer.com, and also that's only a part of it, because I've had my relationship with the world has been one of extremes where I'm, making speeches and people are applauding me and signing up to get autographs, to the loneliness, and to the fact that I couldn't hold a steady job because I was a rebel and I wanted to do things my way, and so on and so forth. And I'm coming to grips with the fact that maybe I need to and I've been making mantras about, I want to implement or produce and implement the most effective and efficient way for me to always understand others. I always thought that I was more caring and more understanding than everybody else, but I always felt that the world doesn't understand me. And then it's like, dude, maybe it's not just that the world doesn't understand you, it's that you don't understand the world, and so on and so forth. So I've had conflicts of the world, I've had loneliness, I've had family problems, although I love my family and we've gotten through the problems and so on and so forth. But I've been beat up like you would not believe just for being myself. I've been in psych wards. I've been in jail, even though I've got the cleanest conscience that you can imagine. It was hell. It was hell. And everything in your brain that tells you no. Everything in your brain that tells you no, there's got to be, of course you can live on this earth. When you analyze it, you go, no, I cannot live on this earth. So that's why if I hover around a pain level of 1, a depression level of 1, or call it what you will, it'll go to where you can, how bad it can get. And that's why it's about alignment and direction and pointing in the right thing, which is the other thing that I got to say about, and I'm sure you probably understand this already, and maybe stated this already, but self-help is fundamental, honey. So there's, if not for self, there's a difference between thinking that taking a self, the points that you make about happiness are fundamental, but what your article fails to address about happiness is that not only should we be entitled to happiness, but it is our duty. You need to understand that while it's brilliant what you say, that, it's just this recent cultural historical thing that we believe that we're entitled to happiness. It's very brilliant, it's very insightful, it's very informative. It doesn't change the fact that it's not our right to be happy, it's our duty to be happy. And by happy, I don't mean necessarily feeling joy. The stuff that I was writing about happiness goes hand in hand. The stuff that I've been writing for years and saying for years about happiness goes, and that's a bad choice of words, because it's got connotations of the most desirable state, but it's also got connotations of joy, which doesn't have to be joy, okay? But I've been writing stuff about happiness, and the fact of the matter is that it is the fundamental drive of anything in the universe to be well. And you make this very important point about people mistake. You make the same points that I've been making for years. People say, oh, you can't have peace without having war, and you make some very intelligent points about it. It's like, no, you're making a mistake here. It gets very complicated in from a philosophical issue. But if you go Gordian knot and you say no, it's like, it's kind of like saying, oh, you can't have, we must be happy in a context where we understand that we're part of the, whether you look at it from the political perspective, or whether you look at it, or you look at it from the sort of mystical perspective, but that everybody needs to be well. Okay, and I suspect that you're agreeing with me on a lot of these things, and that and as far as self-help, it's fundamental to have the most effective and efficient techniques, ways, and methods to align yourself with choices that are good for you, with the understanding that everyone needs to do that and that we're all connected. So in that context, as I was deliberately and for the purpose of my well-being, devoting my time to having a balance of trying to connect with other women, which is something that holy shit, let me see what time we got on the recorder. Okay. Anyway, so I hate the fact that I spent years after having an incredible social life and having people around me, and like I said, I even lived with one for 7 years, but I've explained what I had to explain, I hope, about relationships and the relationships that I've had. I thought this is someone I can have a conversation with when I quote unquote met you. Instead of talking alone, I can talk with somebody. How's that for irony? That you're explicitly saying not only to me but to the whole world, I'm very ill, which doesn't begin to describe what I think you're going through. And you can't get back to people. But I think that possibly side by side with my continuing in a balanced way to align myself with other women that in 51 years I've never still been able to find that I can have a healthy relationship with. I also, much as it feels bad to, because the thing with Veronica that I sort of went through the breakup through is that for approximately 3 months, after we only saw each other a few times, about 1 hour each night, for only about a week or so, after 2 years that we hadn't seen each other, when I found her again. For 3 months, I was sending her love messages, but it was a monologue because she, quote unquote, can't, quote unquote, won't write back to me. In fact, she's possibly in risk. Well, it's complicated, but and I had to struggle with the pain getting stronger in my understanding. This relationship is in your mind. You're speaking to a microphone. You're not speaking to the woman that's in your life. Much as there's a part of me that hates doing that again, I also think that there's an opening for understanding, okay, if you know the kind of car that you can be with, and Donna, that by be with, I see, the thing is, I don't even care much for the taboo zones, for touching there. So your significant other could be in the somewhat unlikely event that you find yourself reading and or listening and having that type of relationship with me, with somebody who's also at the same time saying, on the one hand, sex is not the thing for me, on the other hand, although eroticism is fascinating to me, but if you look at the relationship in terms of the somewhat unlikely scenario in which you actually read and listen to a hypothetical series, if this becomes the first of a series of my communications as if I was talking with you, that there's something that actually could be therapeutic and good for me, for you, hopefully for your significant other, and for everybody in the whole universe. Now, stop the recording and get back to the article that you were writing. But I'm going to do that with another recording.